The most famous and best-known ruin is probably Stegeborg Castle ruins. During its best years, it was a royal palace and was involved in Swedish history in a far more tangible way than other castles. Stegeborg's main function during the Middle Ages was to protect one of Sweden's largest medieval cities, Söderköping. If these walls could talk, they would tell stories of romantic weddings, of sieges, young princes and princesses playing and squabbling, arduous labour, excessive abundance, oppression, brutality and violent death. And last but not least, the silence that ensued when the castle was finally abandoned and reclaimed by Mother Nature. The earliest castle settlement on the island was destroyed during the siege and the imprisonment of Magnus Birgersson in 1318. The island was then abandoned until 1363, when reconstruction of the castle began. In 1390, Queen Margareta held an important council meeting at Stegeborg, and a few years later, on Midsummer's Day, 1394, Söderköping was attacked by pirates, the so-called Vitali brothers. The pirates attacked the town in great numbers, and it appears that they were able to pass through Stegeborg without any resistance. Stegeborg was strategically important, not only in protecting Söderköping, but also for those who ruled on Stegeborg. Stegeborg was a county which in the Middle Ages encompassed an area equal in size to today's Söderköping and Norrköping combined. This gave the castle wardens marvellous opportunities to help themselves to a good share of the surplus income when the king received his. These men were often brutal and ruthless tyrants whose main goal was to fill their own pockets. In 1467, Ivar Axelsson Tott was appointed steward of Stegeborg Castle. 5 years later, he became the owner of Stegeborg Castle and its fiefdoms in perpetuity. Between 1472 and 1487, he rebuilt large parts of the castle, which gave it the appearance it has today. But nothing lasts forever. In 1487, Ivar Axelsson Tott came into conflict with the council because of his piracy activities. The conflict came to an end between February and May, when Stegeborg was besieged and Tott was forced to surrender. When Gustav Vasa was crowned Swedish king in 1523, Stegeborg became a more permanent royal residence. Gustav lived here quite often, and his son Johan, who later became Johan III, was born here in 1537. Following the death of Gustav Vasa in 1560, his widow Katarina inherited the castle. She stayed there only occasionally, but nevertheless kept a permanent staff of up to 110 people at the castle. When Johan III was proclaimed king, Stegeborg was transformed into a Renaissance-style castle. Additional brick floors were built on top of the existing granite walls that Ivar Axelsson Tott had erected 100 years earlier. 2 extra floors were also added to Tott's round tower, which gave it the appearance it has today. Johan III's third daughter, Princess Anna, came to live at Stegeborg and laid out a herb garden which one can still see traces of today on the castle's east side. Johan III died in 1592, and his son Sigismund, who was already king of Poland, was crowned as the new Swedish king. Sigismund was a Catholic, which was not entirely without its problems in Protestant Sweden. Conflicts broke out between the relatives, and Sigismund was forced to try and stop the rebellion that was heading towards him. On the 25th of September, the Battle of Stångebro erupted outside Linköping, where after fierce fighting, Sigismund was beaten by his uncle Duke Karl. On October the 8th, Sigismund and his sister, Princess Anna, left Stegeborg and set sail to Poland. Sigismund would never return to Sweden. In 1604, Duke Karl was crowned and became Karl IX. Now we move forward in time. Karl IX dies, and his son Gustav Adolf II ascends to the throne. Stegeborg is handed over to the king's brother-in-law, Johann Casimir of Zweibrücken. Johann Casimir lives at Stegeborg for 30 years, and his children and their cousins often play here. One of them will later become king and the other queen. The female cousin is called Kristina, who later becomes queen when her father Gustav Adolf II dies. In 1654, Kristina abdicates, and her cousin Johann Casimir of Zweibrücken's eldest son becomes the new ruler, Carl Gustav X. His younger brother Adolf Johan becomes Duke of Stegeborg. Adolf Johan will be the last person to live at Stegeborg Castle. He dies in 1689, and Stegeborg reverts to the crown. The castle's final days are marked by poverty and decay until it is finally abandoned and falls into disrepair. After a parliamentary decision in 1731, parts of Stegeborg are demolished and the stone transported to the Royal Palace in Stockholm and to other buildings in Norrköping. Stegeborg then stands empty and deserted. In 1901, King Oscar II visited Stegeborg and proclaimed it a protected area. "12 years later, his son, Gustav V, makes a visit to the castle ruins, which were continuing to decay. In 1935, things started to move. The castle's partially collapsed walls were revealed and then documented. After this, the rebuilding process began. Between 1938 and 1992, restoration work on the walls at Stegeborg continued. But then, in May 2014, a large section of the north wall collapsed. The wall had stood there since Ivar Axelsson Tott built it in the 1480s. In the summer of 2015, major restoration of the wall began. The work was completed in 2016. Stegeborg, a monument to past history, the 12th century fortification that had grown into a grand Renaissance castle, in desolate ruins since the mid-1700s, was now on its way into the future.